Welcome to Crisis in Perception. So today, we're going to dig into the system behind Elizabeth Kolbert's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Sixth Extinction. Now, this isn't going to be a book summary. Instead, what we're doing here is a structural analysis. We're trying to understand the engine that's driving this unprecedented biological crisis she documents so powerfully.
You know, Kolbert kicks off her book with this really profound epigraph from the biologist E.O. Wilson. And it just perfectly frames this central, tragic irony that we're about to explore, that the very moment a species, us, becomes smart enough to understand itself, it also becomes the agent of destruction on a planetary scale.
Okay, so what is the engine driving all this? To really get it, we first have to put a name to the system that's at play.
The term for this system is the Anthropocene. But here's what's so important to get. This isn't just some passive block of time, a new geological epoch. No, it's an active, dynamic global system. And the crucial point is, its primary driver is the sheer scale of human industrial throughput.
In this system, it runs on a very specific kind of relentless logic. So let's try a metaphor to really get our heads around how it works.
So at its very core, the system is designed for one single purpose: throughput. Its only goal is to process materials and energy, just moving them from one state to another as fast as humanly possible. You can almost picture it like this massive, planet-sized conveyor belt, just constantly humming, constantly in motion. And on one end of this belt, we're feeding it the Earth's incredible living complexity. You know, forests, coral reefs, entire ecosystems that took millions of years to evolve.
And then, on the other end, what does it spit out? Immediate, measurable stuff. Energy, commodities, economic growth. You see, the process is the goal.
And here's the really crucial part: how the system keeps itself going. Our global economic and political institutions are basically built to reward this process. They incentivize things like rapid land conversion and intensive resource extraction because those actions generate quick, measurable growth, the kind of stuff that looks great in a quarterly report or helps win an election. The system's logic prioritizes what can be counted right now. Meanwhile, all that slow, cumulative ecological damage, the ocean getting more acidic, the planet getting warmer, that's treated as an externality. It's a cost that gets discounted because it's paid by someone else, somewhere else, or way off in the future. And this isn't an accident. That's the design.
So, when you run a system with these kinds of incentives, and you scale it up to the entire planet, the results, well, they're not random at all. They're actually pretty predictable, measurable consequences.
First up, this conveyor belt of throughput is causing these huge chemical revolutions, literally changing the fundamental composition of our air and our oceans.
So, like Kolbert lays out, all our activity, burning fossil fuels, deforestation, has jacked up the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by more than 40%. And a massive chunk of that CO2, it gets soaked up by the oceans, making them more acidic and totally rewriting the chemistry that supports all kinds of marine life, from coral all the way down to plankton.
All right, next up, the system is physically rearranging the face of the planet, chopping up these vast, connected ecosystems into little isolated islands.
And this image here, it just perfectly captures the consequence of that. Ecologists have a name for it: the species-area relationship. It's basically a predictable mathematical curve. As you shrink the size of a habitat, the number of species it can support inevitably drops. It's not one-to-one. You don't cut a habitat in half and immediately lose half the species. But it guarantees, over time, a steady, predictable march toward extinction.
Okay, so the third outcome is a little paradoxical. At the exact same time we're creating these little isolated islands of habitat, we're also just obliterating the biggest island boundaries on the planet, the oceans themselves.
I mean, think about it. Millions of years of species being separated by geography, that's all being undone in just a few decades. Kolbert points out that something like 10,000 different species are being shuttled around the globe every single day, just in the ballast water of ships. This massive global remixing creates what scientists call a mass invasion event, and it puts native species under unbelievable pressure.
So that brings up a big question, right? If all this damage is so clear, so measurable, so predictable, why does the system just keep on running? And that is the critical question. The answer isn't really about a lack of individual morality or people not caring. The persistence is actually baked right into the structure of the system itself.
You can really boil it down to three main reasons for this inertia. First, you've got lagged feedback. The carbon we pump out today, we won't feel its full warming effect for decades. That totally disconnects the action from the consequence. Second, there's distributed responsibility. I mean, when the entire global economy is contributing, no single person or company feels accountable. And third, there's structural lock-in. Our cities, our power grids, our entire civilization is physically built around this high-throughput model, which makes changing course incredibly difficult.
And all of this, taken together, leads to the core idea here. It creates what we call a crisis in perception. We see a dying coral reef over here, a frog species disappearing over there, a forest getting chopped up, and we treat them like separate, isolated environment issues. We totally fail to see them as the connected, predictable outputs of the exact same global system of industrial throughput.
And finally, it's so important to realize that this whole extinction system, it's not running in a vacuum. It's tangled up with pretty much every other major system that defines our modern world.
Think about it. That conveyor belt we talked about, it's powered by our global energy system. Its speed, that's set by international trade and logistics. The stuff we feed into it, that's supplied by industrial food production. And the whole thing keeps running because our governance systems are focused on short-term election cycles, not long-term ecological stability. It really is a system of systems.
You know, Kolbert's work really leaves you with this profound and kind of heavy realization. She writes, "Right now, we are deciding, without quite meaning to, which evolutionary pathways will remain open and which will forever be closed. No other creature has ever managed this, and it will unfortunately be our most enduring legacy. Recognizing the system that produces this outcome and our own role within it, that's got to be the first step toward really understanding. Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.